Hey folks, it's Craig Bushon, Be First in Media. What's in the garage segment? Exciting today because today we are at the General Motors Customer Relations Service Center right here in Austin, Texas. Acronym is CARS, so check it out. Just go online, you can Google it and find everything you need to know. Beautiful facility, 100,000 square feet, 500 employees. It's a great place to be in Austin, right here, right now, because there's a big race coming up. I'm going to tell you a little bit before I get to this person to my left, which a lot of you will recognize, all you fans of NASCAR. But this Sunday, as the Texas Motor Speedway takes its turn in the chase spotlight after a weekend of short track racing in Martinsville, the NASCAR Sprint Cup stars return to the second fastest track in the whole circuit, right here in Texas. And you know, this particular track, the race that's coming up is 334 laps, 501 miles. This person on my left is, you've been there before, okay, you've got some history there. And he's Jeff Burton, number 31, sponsored by Caterpillar, manufacturer Chevrolet, drives the Impala vehicle, Richard Childress Racing Team. I'll keep my breath here. And he's no stranger to victory lane. Jeff Burton was Texas Motor Speedway's first two-time Sprint Cup Series race winner after visiting Victory Lane in the inaugural Sprint Cup Series event in 1997. And again in 2007, Burton has also tallied 3 top 5 and 9 top 10 finishes while leading 180 laps at the 1.5 mile facility. Whew.
Say, man.
Wow, that's a lot of stuff. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to have me. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. You know, it's an exciting time right now. There's a big race coming up, obviously. You've been there before, and we're going to have a couple questions from some of the fans of the program that are big NASCAR fans. And one of them is going to be from a 15-year-old young lady, okay, and the youth coming up, the next generation. But the Texas Motor Speedway, folks, is an interesting place because it's a fast track. Okay, and you know, it's got, you know, a specific, you know, it's specifically designed so you can go really fast. What challenges does that give you?
Well, the biggest challenge in Texas is the turns 3 and 4 are completely different than turns 1 and 2. So, you know, 1 and 2 is a much more tighter radius than 3 and 4. So that means that you really want to set your car up differently for both ends of the racetrack, but of course you can't do that. So you have to make compromises. You're never going to get around 1 and 2 as great as you could if you only had to worry about 1 and 2. But you have to get through the 3 and 4 well also. The other thing about Texas is that it's a rough racetrack. It's there's not a lot of bumps, but the bumps that are there are big bumps. And with our cars today, because of the way we set them up, rough racetracks are very difficult to get the car to drive the way you want to get them to drive. So, you know, even though we're going really fast, it's really rough. Most of our racetracks today that are fast are really smooth. We have a lot of new paved racetracks. This track's been a while since it's been paved, and it's rough. And those two things together, I mean, fast speeds on new tires, but the cars slow down a lot because the tires wear out, because the asphalt's abrasive, and then the bumps on top of that, and those are really the biggest challenges.
So the pit crew has a lot to do with keeping you in the game. You probably have to pit more because of that, or do you have specific designing of the tires, obviously, for that?
But
type
what
of
happens
track?
at every race is it's a, you know, when you decide to pit has to do with 2 things: what kind of track position, and where are you on fuel. So at some point you have to pit to put on fuel, or you'll run out of fuel, obviously. The other thing is, some racetracks and some tires, you may only change left side tires 1 time in an entire race. So you're always trying to do as little as you can on pit road, because that makes the pit stop shorter. That gives you better track position. But at Texas, that's a racetrack where, because it is abrasive, you're probably going to put 4 tires on most of the time. The only thing about that is, if you get a short run, meaning 20 laps, 15 laps, you may want to just do 2 tires. Get that track position. Even though you may be slower, if you're in front of a guy, he can't necessarily pass you.
Sure.
So it's a trade-off between, you know, what's better for you, better tires or better track position.
Well, a lot of the communication that happens, unlike a small business, if you will, that people have in real life, when you're out there and you're on the track, you're running that small business out there, you're all communicating, you have managers, you have teammates, everybody has an intricate part. You know, what are some of the things, so a lot of youth today, one of the focuses we're doing today is to get this next generation to understand all forms of racing. I mean, even here in Austin, obviously Formula One's here, there's a lot of stuff push happening there. But NASCAR, you know, long, deep heritage in this country, you know, and, you know, the stock car, you know, and how it's evolved. You know, when I was a kid, I had Hot Wheels, and I loved it, you know, and back when I was a kid, they were like superheroes. You know,
Still have Hot Wheels.
Yeah, exactly right. And you'd look at it, and you go, wow, that's great. But I never thought about being a driver, because it was like a superhero getting into that vehicle. You know, what are some of the things that the youth can do to get involved with racing today?
There is more opportunities for youth racing today than there's ever been. My son is not the only one in the country, but he's one of many that started racing at 5 years old through quarter midgets. So, and Texas has a few quarter midget racetracks. The quarter midgets they're just what they sound like. You know, there's a midget race car, full roll cage, open wheel. There's quarter scale. Great racing, small racetracks teaches them, you know, how to race. There's go-karts. Then as you get a little bit older, there's legend cars. There's bandolero cars. And then also, if you look around, you can find a real high-performance driving class as it relates to driving a go-kart. That's a great way too. So there's so many options out there that really weren't there when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I started racing at 7, and the only option was motorcycles or go-karts. Yeah. And that was it. And today there's so many more things to do, and there's go-kart tracks around the country that you can go in for the day. You can rent a cart. It's not crazy expensive. And you know, I think the key to youth being in our sport is for them to experience it and to realize how hard it is. It's not hard to ride around. But once somebody tries to do it better than you, it all of a sudden gets really hard.
Yeah, the challenge, that's right.
And so that to me is what we have to have youth involved in our sports, to have the appreciation of how hard it is to drive the cars, but also what are the cars? You know, when I grew up, I loved cars. You know, I got magazines, I looked at cars, and I wanted a 57 Chevrolet. You know, that's what I wanted. I wanted a car. And, you know, getting kids back where they, you know, Chevrolet's a good example with Sonic, where they can customize a car. Things like that, where you can, you know, kids get excited about cars again, and get really excited about the, you know, not necessarily about just going fast, which is what happened in the '60s. It was all about how fast you could go.
Right.
But now it's about all the customization you can do and make your car. It might be a completely stock GM running vehicle, but there's not another one in the country that's painted like yours. You got a special spoiler on it. You got a set of wheels on it. That kind of stuff is cool, and that we need to find a way to get kids more involved in that.
Well, it's interesting you brought that up, and you said it that way, because off camera before the shoot here today, you know, my dad lived American Graffiti. That was the story of his life. He was part of that era, and he raced the ball bearing burners, was the name of his team in Southern California, and you know, then you know, it was all about modifying Dad's car, or the $500 Pontiac you could get, and put a 6-pack on it, and do all these cool things to run a drag race, right? But there was a passion. There was a passion in this country about the automobile industry.
And then you had to know how to work on it, because it was going to break.
That's exactly right. Well, you push
that's what's different today is this stuff is so reliable, but you can still customize it. I'm still living American Graffiti. I've got a 33 Roadster in my shop right now that I built, and I got a GM crate motor putting in it with an automatic transmission.
There you go.
You know, and
automatic, to say automatic too. Back in the day, there's no way you'd want an automatic.
You can put an automatic transmission in that shifts better than you can.
That's right.
You know, so those are things that you know, we have to get youth involved. My kids love coming. I've got a 17-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son. They love coming up and working on a hot rod. Yeah. And who would think a 17-year-old girl would want to work on a hot rod? But you know, once they see it, or like see pictures from what it was, where you know really was years ago, what it is now, they start to really get interested. And I think that for motorsports, not just NASCAR, but when motorsports are healthy, NASCAR is healthy. Right. And it's not a competition, F1, NASCAR, or whatever. It's racing.
Sure.
And there's more to racing than just going fast. There's how do you do it? You know, what do you do? There's an experience, and you don't have. You know, there's only a few drivers in the series. There's so many other ways to be involved other than just being a driver. That's what's cool about it. Just so many opportunities in the sport.
Well, it's funny, you know, going fast. A lot of people want to go fast. A lot of the youth out there is about getting in a vehicle and just going fast. And you know, speed kills. You know, and listen, you can go fast in anything, but how it handles it and how you stop is a whole other.
That's where you know, I believe that teaching kids to race in a controlled environment not only is good for them because it's fun.
Sure.
They make friends and all that kind of stuff, but when they do turn 16, and they do, you know, they know how to handle situations.
Absolutely.
And what putting a child in a go-kart or in a quarter midget, what that does, or a bandolero, what that does is it teaches them when things are going wrong how to handle them.
Right.
And you think about driver's education today, we teach kids how to drive. We don't teach them how to prevent from wrecking. And things happen on the highway that you can't simulate. And so having a chance to put a child in a situation where those things do happen, where they got 5-point harnesses, they got helmets, they got roll cages, and they learn how to handle it, that ultimately makes them much, much, much safer drivers. Some people say, well, that makes them want to race on the highway. I say that's a bunch of nonsense. Once you've raced in a controlled environment, you have no desire to go fast on the highway.
Yeah, and with the advent of all these technologies that are going in the automobiles, it's fantastic, but then also there's a big issue with the youth texting and driving, a lot of that going on. And I'm driving right now, I'm reviewing a 2013 Malibu LTZ, and it has the accident avoidance system in it where I can set it, and periodically I'll test it, and it red flashing light, boom, bing, 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 to shock people out of sometimes this, you know, we're in this real strange place in technology today that smart devices and phones and things like that make it dangerous driving situation. So the automobile industry is really pushing to try to wake you up if you happen to be doing that and shock you into it.
And we shouldn't look at technology as it being dangerous. The way we should look at technology is how do we use that technology to make it safe.
That's right.
And you know, easier to change your radio, easier to set your nav, easier to do those things where you're not distracted when you need to do something in the car. And that's what we need to embrace. There's a big push about, oh, we don't want technology. You know, you have people say you don't want phones in cars, you don't want, but if it's done properly, it actually makes driving safer.
Absolutely.
And that's what you're seeing in cars today, is you're seeing that information center that's easily touched, it's easily used, it helps you with your nav, it helps you pay attention, as you mentioned, collision avoidance, those kind of things. You know, my Tahoe, when somebody pulls next to me, pops up on the mirror, somebody's next to me. That's right. You know, and things like that. You know, technology can make us safer, and we need to embrace that.
Absolutely right. And again, folks, today is a special day because we're out here. There's a big race coming up, but bigger than that, it's not just a race. We're sitting here with Jeff Burton. He's number 31. He's a NASCAR driver, and he takes it serious, but he also reaches out to the youth. A lot of you out there that, you know, are trying to figure out, hey, what do I want to be when I grow up? And I happen to have a question from one of them, if you want to answer that. One of them, it came in from, let me find here, Amanda, 15 years old. And she said, you mentioned it just a little bit earlier, but her specific question is, what is the best pathway to becoming a NASCAR driver?
Well, you know, there is not, in my opinion, there's not one pathway. And because I've seen so many different people get to this level and be successful a lot of different ways.
Sure.
The one thing I can promise you it takes is passion. You can't get involved in this sport thinking, I'm going to be a driver and make a lot of money, and that's your goal. Your goal has to be that you just want to race. And almost every driver I know, when they started racing, they weren't thinking about being a cup driver. They were thinking about just having fun and going and racing, and they were working, and they were trying to beat the next guy. It wasn't a goal to be a cup driver. There's a few, but most of them never even thought about that. It was just, it's fun. They had a passion for it. And I think when you start thinking about, wow, what could be a career, I think you take some of that fun away from it. And, and you shouldn't do that, because in order for this to be a successful career, it has to be fun. And so, you know, what I believe is best is for a young person to start relatively young. I personally think quarter midgets are the best way to start, because I think they're safe. They're not too fast. It puts a lot of cars on small racetracks. They have software wall technology at most racetracks. It's a relatively safe. Once you've done that, then the options really start to open up. For a 15-year-old, you know, there's Bandoleros, there's legend cars, and those are probably the best way from a driving standpoint. However, if there's a local short track near you somewhere, you know, there's every division at a local short track. You know, if you really have a passion for it, get in the pits.
There you go.
You know, learn it. Volunteer to help somebody. You know, volunteers. You know, I'll come and help you on Saturday. I'll come and help you on Tuesday night. You know, help you work on the car and learn the car, and you know, and then beg people to let you drive.
That's exactly right.
You know, and you don't. You know, you can't think about, well, I want to drive the best race car on the racetrack. Get an opportunity. You know, and show people what you can do. Because if someone that has talent can take a car that normally doesn't run well and run well with it, people recognize that.
Sure.
And then it's a matter of trying to climb the ladder.
Well, we have a couple minutes left here, and we want to thank again Jeff Burton for coming on the show, and good luck in the race coming up, by the way. You know, it's a dangerous sport, but it's an exciting sport, and you should pay attention to it. It isn't just, you know, cars going around in an oval. There's a lot of things going on if you pay attention. There was a question that was very interesting to me. You and I are in the same age bracket, okay? And one of the questions came in, they asked, they said, many sports like the NFL or NHL tends to end careers quickly, okay? Yet NASCAR has many drivers in their 30s and 40s. What is the key to staying healthy and competitive in such a grueling atmosphere?
Well, I think a couple things. Number one, you know, you don't have to run a 100-yard sprint. You don't have to jump higher than somebody. You know, the reason that professional athletes in other sports, you know, can't go that long is because, you know, you get a 20-year-old that has trained for 8 years, and you're 35, your body's broken down. In racing, those things don't matter so much. It's about hand-eye coordination, and it's about what's right here. And so, if you have a desire, and you're dedicated to it, and you're willing to still work, and it still means something to you, you can be successful into your 50s. Mark Martin's a good example. You know, every weekend he's in his early 50s. Every weekend he goes out there and competes for wins.
Sure.
And it's because he has the desire. And anything that isn't as good physically for him today doesn't affect how fast you can go in a race car. And that's really what it boils down to. Is it now? You have to work harder to stay in shape. You have to do a little more. You have to do a lot more than you did in your 20s. Honestly, in my 20s, I didn't. You know, I played high school basketball, played soccer. When I started racing, I didn't think I needed to do anything. As I've gotten older, I've had to train a lot harder. But I think what it really boils down is desire. You know, a lot of people that leave the sport didn't leave it because they couldn't do it anymore. They left it because they didn't want to do it anymore.
Sure.
They've done it so long.
They lose that passion.
Yeah, they wanted to do something else.
Yeah.
And so as long as you have that passion, I don't see, you know, unless something develops physically, I don't see where age really matters.
Wow, fantastic. Last question. What is the biggest challenge facing the future of NASCAR with the next generation of potential fans?
I think that we live in a world where the X Games have become very popular. We live in a world where you have instant gratification. Things happen quickly. You look at the NFL, you know, you have a series of downs. Every down is exceptionally important to what happens in the overall game. Although the game might be 3 hours, you have all these, you know, it's first down, it's second down, and everything happens quickly. And, you know, our sport has been built on long races, you know, 400, 500-mile races, 4 hours, 4.5 hours. I think that we're going to have to adjust to what people is normal in society, and we can't have marathon events. We've got to have high action, maybe lower time events, because it seems like everybody's busier today.
Sure.
It seems like there's more pull in all directions for different entertainment purposes. It's just, to me, that's the biggest challenge, is meeting the needs and the desires of the fan today, and what are those needs and desires tomorrow. And we can't stay stagnant as a sport. We have to be willing to adjust and change in order to attract new fans, in order to keep the fans we have. And it's a really fine line, because we have the fans we have today because of who we are.
Sure.
And we don't want to change and lose those fans. Right. At the same time, we want to give them, you know, Steve Jobs said it best, you know, somebody said told him that he needed to do a study group to determine what the products needed to be, and he said, they don't know what we're going to bring them something that they don't know about. You know, so we can't do a study group, because we're going to give them something they've never heard of, right. They've never seen, they've never felt, they've never touched. And I think that needs to be NASCAR's philosophy, is that, you know, we look so much at study groups and those kind of things. I think we forget to be creative, and we forget that there's a way out there that nobody's thought
Sure,
about,
right.
in order to make the sport better.
It's the genius, you know, it's that entrepreneurial spirit that really defines, you know, the next business, the next great idea, and that comes from just what you said. Inside is that drive, and you know, I think it's an exciting sport. I think the automobile industry is a wonderful thing to focus on if you want to have a career. You know, if you want to do something in the industry, it's a great industry to be in.
One thing too, next year I think is going to be a great year for us, because in 2013, a Chevrolet on the racetrack is the Chevrolet you see in the showroom. It is, we have gotten away from that. We have, in an effort to build safer cars, cars that were more easily to tech for NASCAR,
Sure.
Those kind of things, we built this common car.
Right.
And part of racing is that you want your Chevy team to win.
Right.
And you want them to beat a Ford.
Right.
And
That's exactly right.
And we've got away from that a little bit because of good reasons. But now, through time, we found a way to do all of that. To have a car that's easier for NASCAR to tech, have a car that is safe, but it be a Chevrolet.
Absolutely right.
And 2013, you haven't seen the Chevrolet yet because they haven't. It's a few weeks away. They've got a big announcement coming up. But when you see the new Chevrolet, you're going to do. That's what
exactly
I want to see.
Right. That's that carryover.
And I think that's going to be really, really important for our sport because, again, it's a vehicle that people could look at and they could say, I can make that car mine.
That's right.
Or it could be a daily driver. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I think those things are just vitally important.
Yeah, the looks, the style, absolutely, completely agree. So there you have it. A couple weeks away, pay attention, General Motors. We'll be talking about it here. Jeff Burton just told you about it. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's good stuff. I mean, listen, we could sit here all day and talk about it. I love the industry for many, many reasons, but make sure that, if you have a child that, maybe doesn't know what he or she wants to do, or maybe he's just sitting around kind of doing nothing, bring them to a race. How about that? A local race, a dirt track, circle track, an 8-track. Just get them out there and let them just feel the energy.
That's right.
And so that's what it's all about. That's why we did this great interview today. And I want to thank you so much for tuning in. This will be up on Be First in Media, CraigBushonShow.com, also up on YouTube. Share it with all your friends. Make sure that everybody knows about the race that's coming up this weekend, but not just this weekend. Pay attention to the sport. Get in the game. Thank you so much.
Thank you.